Hello there, fellow festival goers. I'm the Transporter, and I'll be your host for today's Motorfest Mastery, where I'll cover how to make turns effectively. As a car tester, I've often improved simply by practicing, which is a very important tip I'm passing on to you guys. But there's more to look for when trying to shed precious seconds off your time by improving your cornering techniques, and that's what the Motorfest staff want me to show you today. Now, I know you have the option to turn on the ideal line during events, so you know when to brake and how much throttle to use when cornering. But here's my first important tip. Turn that off. It's true that the racing line shows you where to go, but the fastest drivers have theirs turned off because they can visualize where to brake, where to turn, and how much throttle they need when entering and exiting corners. This might seem a bit worrying, but I promise it's worth it. To help, here's my next tip. Head to Hanauma Racetrack and just drive around there for a while. The great thing about the Motorfest is that these islands of Hawaii are not just open for you to explore, but also for practice, and Hanauma Racetrack is the perfect spot to understand what it takes to go faster. You see these markers on the left side here? These are braking zone markers that serve as reference points for drivers to know when to brake when approaching certain corners. Treat them as a track telling you, hey, there's a steep corner ahead. Be careful. You see these red and white lines at the corner? This is known as the apex. You always want to aim for that when initiating a corner, as it's part of the ideal racing line for cornering faster. It also serves as a marker to make sure you're using the majority of the track, not just a small portion of it. One of the most common mistakes I've seen people make, and that I've made myself, is braking and turning at the same time. This might work in emergencies, but it always results in losing traction, missing the apex, and understeering into the corner. Why? Weight transfer. When you brake hard into a corner, most of the car's weight shifts to the front, and the front wheels are the ones that help steer the car. Therefore, with too much weight up front while braking, your front tires lose traction, making it nearly impossible to steer the car correctly. Instead, brake first, let off the brake and the gas, then steer into the corner to maintain an optimal turning line. Another tip, practice with manual shifting. I know that most of you completed several Monkey's Kitchen Bats and other Summit contest constraints that limit you to using the sequential gearbox, but what if I told you that this method actually helps you achieve the right amount of speed when cornering? You never want to head into a corner too quickly, as you end up losing the racing line and running right into the wall. Nor do you want to go too slowly, because you lose time and not make the most effective use of the track. This is why shifting manually is ideal. You have complete control over how fast you want your car to go when cornering, so you have the ideal amount of grip and speed, and you can adjust on the spot rather than trying to force the computer to shift up or down for you. So you've done all the practice you could on a racetrack, but what about on the streets of Hawaii? It's definitely a very different setting, but the techniques you've picked up on the track work just the same on the streets. Always aim for the apex, brake before turning, and manually shift to reach the optimal gear when entering corners. A few final tips. When racing in the inner city, whether it's on Oahu or Maui, you can treat sidewalks as the apex of a racetrack when cornering, but don't stay on them too long. Just like the apex rubber on a racetrack, sidewalks don't have the same grip as asphalt, so you'll lose stability if you're there for too long. My last tip has a name, and it's one the pros have been using for a while now. It's called the gutter run, and it's taken from a certain anime that I know that you know what I'm talking about. In grand races and certain events that have you racing on narrow roads on the hills and mountain passes of Hawaii, instead of trying to handbrake and drift around those steep bends, try aiming for the apex of the road and putting your closest set of tires to the corner on the grass while leaving your furthest set on the tarmac when cornering. It's a cleaner and much faster way to go around those difficult hairpin turns. So, let's recap. Practice makes perfect. Drive around Hanauma Racetrack and learn to use the entire track to your advantage, knowing the braking points and apexes for the optimal racing line. Manual shifting. Practice shifting manually, as it gives you complete control of your car and the optimal grip and speed to handle corners. Brake first, then turn into corners. You don't want to brake and turn at the same time, as you'll lose more grip and understeer rather than find the grip to tackle corners. Finally, don't forget the gutter run. It's a useful tactic to get ahead of your opponents and achieve faster times on certain tracks. That's all the time I've got for today, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to my episode of Motorfest Mastery. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you at the festival.